according to a research paper on post-consumer textile waste written by Boston University's Dr. Julia Devoy and her research group in 2021, the United States alone generates around 34 billion pounds or 17 million tons of textile waste, and only about 15% of it gets recycled. Textile waste can include towels, beddings, curtains, all sorts of things, but the most common type found in landfills is discarded clothing. In 2018, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency reported that around 9 billion tons of clothing and footwear was found in landfills. Now, that number is very scary and overwhelming, and I personally can't do a lot about that, but I can at least do a little bit for me. I'm not going to pretend like I can afford to center my life around sustainability, or honestly even that I'm doing the best that I can, but I am trying, and that's one less bedsheet or pair of jeans or t-shirt that ends up in the ground. And I'm pretty cool with that. And speaking of t-shirts, I have a lot of clothing that is just sitting in boxes waiting to be recycled. Most of it is t-shirts. Over the last 10 or so years, I've gathered a lot of these, either as something I've purchased while on a trip, something someone else handed down to me, something I got from like a group event or volunteer work or school, or just something that I had that I just grew out of. And don't be fooled, the piles of shirts that I have here in the video are not even half of the clothing that I have stored up to be recycled. There are a lot of existing t-shirt recycling projects that are out there, but most of them are about taking a large t-shirt in and tailoring it to fit, or taking a small t-shirt and turning it into a bag or a pillow or a rag rug, which is all fine and well, but the goal is to make something that I like and I will use a lot. And I know dang well that I leave the house using the same black crossbody bag every single day, and I wear the same 3 t-shirts. In my desperate search, I came across these really cute patchwork dresses and decided to take those concepts and modify and combine them to suit the materials that I have available to me. I came up with 2 potential versions and selected 8 or 9 shirts in complementary colors. Clearly, I originally planned to make 1 blue and white dress and 1 black and red dress. In the end, I only had enough time to make one of the dresses, the black and red dress, but hey, I guess we'll save the puffy sleeve version for another video or something. Also, I accidentally hit my forehead on the wall sconce shelf that I have while I was climbing onto my desk, so don't worry about this big welt that is forming on my forehead. It's my own fault and the consequences of my own actions. So step 1 was trying to figure out approximately how many t-shirts that I needed to finish this project. To create a base pattern for myself, I picked a dress of a length that is comfortable to me and a crop top that is both the size and shape of what I wanted the dress top bodice section to be. And then I began layering and arranging the various shirts I had available to me in a pattern to sort of mimic what I wanted the final result to look like, and this is what I ended up with. Okay, so here's the plan. This is a shirt that I really like. I like the design, and the design is pretty far up, so I think I'm going to crop it, but it's also a... What? Wait, how is this an extra large and this is a large and this is bigger? Maybe it's for kids. Anyways, I kind of want to take out this seam and replace it with this material. I think I also want to repurpose the fringe, I guess, that's on the end of this shirt and put it along the edge of the sleeve to sort of give it a little bit more length. So it'll have this red side accent here and then a matching ruffle, I guess. And then for the bottom half of the skirt, I think I'm gonna split all of these shirts in half. I'm kind of bummed because I think I'll have to cut this one here and we'll lose the lightsaber, but we'll still have 2 cool graphics. And then I'll shift this bottom down a bit and this sort of to the side, like in there. And then to keep the red fringe theme, I will try to salvage as much of this and put it at the bottom as well. But for what I won't be able to use that for, I'll make fringe out of these. The vision is there. Okay. So first off, I decided to get the more complicated sewing bit out of the way and work on the top, starting by cropping the main shirt and then removing the side seams all the way up the sleeves as well so that only the shoulders are connected. Then I laid this red shirt and Mandalorian shirt over a t-shirt that fits me comfortably. I lined up the sides of the red shirt with the side of the well-fitting shirt and the neck hole of the Mandalorian shirt with the neck hole of the well-fitting shirt. That way I could mark exactly how much red accent material would be needed to make up the difference between the two shirts. I cut that small section out and then used it as a pattern to cut out a matching piece from the other side. And then it was time to serge all of those pieces before sewing things together to make sure no unexpected fraying was going to happen, especially in a part of a shirt that's probably going to get a lot of movement and wear and tear around it. Obviously, if you have a t-shirt that you want as the top part of the dress and your t-shirt fits well, you can skip this part entirely. Just crop the shirt to the desired length. I just am really fond of the Mandalorian graphic and I wanted that to be sort of the main feature of the dress, but I'm also an adult woman with dimensions and that shirt is an extra large youth's shirt and I cannot wear that comfortably. Also, not to expose myself, but I am telling lies on the internet. You mayhaps notice that this dress is not fully made of t-shirts because the red floral shirt is obviously just a nice blouse that conveniently fits the color palette. But first of all, it is still an old shirt that I am recycling, so I am still fulfilling the prompt, but also I firmly believe that there's no reason that this couldn't be done with two regular t-shirts. The underarms will be the same. The only thing that will be different is that your t-shirt probably doesn't come with a pre-made hemmed ruffle at the bottom of it, which is what I used for the ruffles that I attached at the end of the sleeves. I just cut that off directly, ironed it a little bit, and then serged that onto the new top sleeve. But if you were making this with only t-shirts and not being a big old cheater like I am, you'll just have to create a hemmed ruffle by yourself, which is totally doable. I do recommend if you want it to lay nicely, you might want to pick a t-shirt that has a thinner material. But with that, you have completed the top expansion process. If you're not a dress person, you can definitely hem the shirt here and just have like a cute crop top with some cool accented sides. I think that's pretty fun, but I was not done. So thus begins the process of measuring and cutting these shirts into rectangles. Also, my hair was like this all day and nobody told me it was sticking out like this. Anyways, there isn't really a science to the way that I'm cutting these pieces out. My rectangles were approximately 8 inches tall and 16 inches wide-ish, but it's not really a requirement by any means. Honestly, you can get away with any size of square or rectangle as long as the height of the pieces stays relatively similar. The only reason that mine was shorter was because most of the shirts that I was working with had graphics on only the top half of the shirt. If you have a bunch of t-shirts with big and tall graphics that you don't want to cut in half, then you could do one tier instead of multiple like I did, or maybe you want to make more tiers or make a checkerboard pattern in your skirt. Then obviously you need more exact squares, but really you can get as creative as you want with this part. Before you make your creativity permanent with a sewing machine though, I highly recommend arranging all the pieces on a flat surface to make sure, number one, that you have enough pieces, and number two, that they can be organized in a way that you like. I was not going for a perfect checkerboard, I'm just doing kind of a staggered random but not that random arrangement, so the dress looks casual and easygoing, but it actually took a lot of effort. And from there, I did the laziest version of quilting that you possibly can, and started sewing the t-shirt rectangles edge to edge to make a long row for each tier. Secretly, I would recommend not just using a serger to connect the pieces and also like going over them with a sewing machine, but just to be fully transparent, I just used a serger because I was in a little bit of a time crunch. Also, if you don't have a serger for this project, that is totally fine, you don't need one. A zigzag stitch on a regular sewing machine works just as well, and that's what I used for my projects way before I had a proper serger. I'm gonna be honest, the length of these rows are totally arbitrary. For mine, I just made sure that the top row was the shortest and the bottom row was the longest, but only by a couple of inches. I just wanted the gathering to increase just a tiny bit with each row. So basically, the more gathers you want, the longer you make your row. That being said, some t-shirts are made of pretty heavy material, so maybe don't go too crazy with the gathers. But also, who am I to judge? The sewing room is a lawless land. And because I wanted to feel extra bonita, I wanted to create a ruffle hem at the bottom of the dress to match the ruffles on the sleeve. So out of whatever was left of the blouse that I used at the start of the video, I cut 3-inch wide strips and hoped and prayed that it would be enough length to create a reasonably cute ruffle for the bottom of the skirt. I did not do any math ahead of time, I was just straight up manifesting, which I don't recommend, but hey, it worked for me, so I'm absolutely not going to learn to do better next time. Because I hate filming myself and avoid it as often as possible, I'm bad at remembering what footage I need, and I don't have a ton of good footage for this part, but basically, I turned my rows into loops by sewing the ends together, and then stack those loops on top of each other, sewing the long sides together to create a full skirt. I had to create loops because I didn't want any of the vertical seams in my skirt to line up. I wanted them all to sort of stagger for the aesthetic, I guess. But if you're doing a nice checker pattern or you have a place where all the seams in your skirt line up, you can absolutely sew it together flat and then close the back of the skirt up at the end. But it was at this point that I realized I'm really stinking short and things were starting to look a little wrong. I thought maybe if I put an elastic waistband in, I could keep the skirt a little higher and a little poofier, and maybe it wouldn't look so long on me, and then I wouldn't have to take things apart. But I'm not sure why I thought this dinky little elastic was gonna make any kind of difference. But you know, if you want to do an elastic waistband, maybe go with something a little bit thicker or stronger, but also the elastic is totally unnecessary. You can still get very, very nice gathers without it. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I've been thinking about taking the elastic out of mine anyways. And I'm really bad at sewing elastic in, mostly because I'm super impatient, so let's just kind of breeze past this part of the video. And you know what the most upsetting part is? That for how difficult sewing the elastic in was for me, it didn't help shorten the dress at all. I know this length works really well for some people, which is great, and I love that for them, and that's kind of the beauty of this project. It's really forgiving and really customizable. And speaking of customization, I basically hacked off the whole bottom row and then re-sewed it onto the second row to get a length that sparks joy for me. But that brings us to the final reveal. Okay, I actually love this dress. I am still torn on the waistband situation. May take the elastic out, just sew it together, but it is a very comfortable dress. I get to wear like 4 of what used to be my favorite shirts at the same time, and like 5 or 6 t-shirts total. And I feel good about helping the planet. It's not much, but it's more than if I hadn't done anything about it at all. Also, just in case y'all were curious, there are quite a few really small scraps that this project made that cannot be turned into other clothing. And as with most of my fabric scraps, I try to save as many of them as possible to use as stuffing for other projects. Any of the bigger pieces that I have left, I definitely want to make into more t-shirt dresses. Like I said, I have a lot of old clothes just waiting to be repurposed. And if you're all interested, maybe I'll try to think of some more creative ways to get rid of old t-shirts that are still aesthetically appealing that you might actually use and try to share them on here. Or maybe I'll just make the puff sleeve dress. But who knows? Not me.